Welcome everyone here at the Independent School for the City. My name is Mike Emmerich. I'm the director of the school. And I'm very happy that you're all here for the 28th edition of Schools Out, for which we've invited David Schmidt and Anne Geenen, who are sitting over there, to give a presentation about their office site practice. I'm going to introduce them later to you. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about the Independent School for the City as well. Also, the program of this evening, I don't know if it's readable, but what we always do with Schools Out is that we invite a speaker. So we have a lecture of around 1 hour, more or less, with time for questions. That's the main part of this evening. We always ask Jort den Hollander, the curator of the Architecture Film Festival Rotterdam, to select a short movie, this time 12 minutes, that relates to the speaker or to the topic that they're talking about. So in the end of after the Q&A, we will also show this movie, and then we hope you all stick around for a drink and to have another conversation. A little bit of context about the Independent School for the City and a little bit of promotion also of what we're going to do the coming period, since you're here. With the Independent School, we always try to be kind of two things. So our activities are aligned along two ways. On the one hand, we organize all sorts of school activities. So that's in smaller groups. We organize workshops that people can enroll. Targeting mainly on professionals. So we always say we are a school for people that already went to school. And at the same time, we want to be a hangout, like this evening, where the discussion about the city can take place, where people can be inspired in more event-like setting. And just to give you an overview of some of the activities that are still coming up. We have one course. It's a 1-week course halfway November. It's called Post-Growth City. Together with Bura Urbanism, we have made a program in which we're going to explore what urban development means if it's not like purely focused on financial growth like it is now. So what if we kind of move past the growth thinking, and what would that mean for how our cities can be designed and how they function? So people can still sign up if they're interested in that. And in December, we're having, we always do a winter workshop, which is much more about making something. And this is a Vishavanka workshop, 4-5 afternoons, during which you're going to learn about embroidery technique of Ukraine, traditional embroidery techniques, which is more or less a language. The patterns all mean something. And this is now used in Ukraine in a really activist way as well in the war. So we're going to kind of play around with that. And we're doing that together with Bogdana Pushtrigan. Don't know if I pronounce it well, but she will be our main tutor in this. And also important to mention is that in February next year, we're starting a 3-month course, Dirty Old Town, Learning from Rotterdam, during which we kind of combine everything that we know about the city and really dive into topics such as social inequality, climate change, and the housing crisis. All these kind of topics will be part of this studio. And for this, the application deadline is on the 1st of December. It's 3 months full time. Also nice to mention is that recently we've started a new research-based lecture series, for which we each time invite a curator to curate 3 lectures in a row every other week or with every 2-3 weeks. And this time we've asked Marina Otero Verzier to curate this first session, and it's about the architecture of data storage. So recently we had our first event on the 18th of October, which was about the design of data infrastructure, for which Marina again invited Ippolito Pestrelli to give a talk. And on the 8th of November, we will focus more on the technology of data infrastructure and data storage with Christopher Slaver, who have, for example, introduced the iPhone here in Europe. So it's kind of someone that has been in tech for a long time. And then on the 22nd of November, there will be one about the future of data storage, for which we've invited, or Marina invited Monica Siefried. And she works on a concept of data storage in DNA of plants and of organic material, which works, I didn't know. So that's going to be interesting as well. And afterwards, there's also the book launch or pre-book launch of Asset Clouds, which is a book that is made around data storage, data centers, etc. So that's something that's coming up, until Christmas. And just as today, every last Friday of the month, we have this Schools Out event. And for the next evening, on the 25th of November, we've invited Adam Nathaniel Furman and Joshua Mardell to talk about their latest book, Queer Spaces, during which they made a study of queer spaces all around the world, and they will give a lecture on that. Last thing, recently, we've finished a studio together with Charlie Koolhaas, which is called the Rotterdam Dream, during which we looked at the kind of the American impact on the city of Rotterdam, like Americanism as an expert model as well. So whether that be in architecture or in the culture or in the fast food that we eat. And that has resulted, it was a research by photography workshop. And it will result in a little book that we're now making, and we've made a selection of pictures, and we hang them there on the panel. So after the lecture, please take a look at them as well. I'm not going to say too much about it. But now this is where you came from today, or why you came today. Schools Out, the 28th edition. With side practice. And I would like to introduce Anne and David first. Side practice is an architecture and design studio, which was founded by Anne Gele and David Schmidt in 2018. More or less around the same time, actually, that we founded the school. So that's also kind of nice. And one of the reasons to invite them is that their office is based in Amsterdam, but also in Mumbai, in India. And this allows them to, or at least we think, and I think you agree, which allows them to develop a different type of skill set also than the average architecture firms that you can find here in the Netherlands. And they are quite consciously working with that as well, in a sense that they're trying to bring what they learn in India, they bring that to their projects in the Netherlands and vice versa. So how they explain it on their website is that they approach each project by committing to a collaborative design process, engaging with makers and users from various backgrounds and disciplines. By engaging with the process of making and construction, they explore material, cultural, and ecological conditions, creating places and objects that have a strong emphasis on detail and become moments of qualities in our daily lives. And some of their recent projects, and I'm not sure what you're going to talk about exactly, but some of the recent projects have been a guest house in Bali, or guest houses in Bali, a boutique hotel on the coast of India, a housing project in Rotterdam. They're also working on several interior and furniture projects. And also worth to mention is that they're currently working on a project that is being realized in Nijmegen. It's an affordable housing project that consists of 81 dwellings. And that's constructed with a timber balloon frame of hennepcrete, so with hemp. And I hope they're going to talk a little bit about that as well, but I'm not sure. I wish you all a really nice evening tonight. And now I would like to give the floor to Anne and David.
Um, well, thank you for this nice introduction, and also thank you a lot for inviting us tonight. We are very excited to be here and speak about our work and our projects. Maybe not all of the ones that you mentioned, but some of that will come on the screen tonight. More so, we will be taking you through a journey of our thoughts, places, methods, situations, and ways of working that inspire us and influence our architecture and design practice. As Mike already mentioned, we work from different contexts. From our studios in Amsterdam, there's a few of our team members here in the audience, which is very nice, and from Mumbai. And this gives us a field of work in which we constantly oscillate between the surroundings and realities in which we are at each specific moment. And through these cross-references and influences from both of these places, our practice, which we very much see as one practice, although we're at two places, is informed by different ways of making and building. And we are fascinated by places of production to understand where materials are coming from, how what we use to build is related to cultural and ecological circumstances. We see here a traditional brick kiln in the northern part of India, in the state of Haryana, that I visited a couple of years ago. And the place literally consists of what it is producing, namely bricks. And its production follows this continuous process that is also very recognizable in the plan and the shape of the built structure. This oval organization. In a direct relation to its place, the bricks in India once were made considering the quality of the soil, and that determines the size of each brick. And therefore bricks all over India were different in size. And during the British Empire this was standardized in order to have a material that was more uniform. And consequently, many regions were suddenly facing with this very poor quality of bricks, as their logical and relation to the soil quality was suddenly undermined.
There are many reasons why the Eameses are an inspiration to us and our way of practicing. But we start with their visit to India and the role they played in design education in that country. In the early 50s, right after the Declaration of Independence of India, the government invited the Eameses to travel to India and form a recommendation in the role of design in the country. The result of this travel was the India Report, which formed the basis of one of the leading design institutes in the country, the NID in Ahmedabad. Their observations of the everyday, particularly their admiration of the lota, its simplicity, multifunctional, archetypical, and unique object to the Indian cultural context. The shift in material from earthenware and metal to contemporary plastic is a story of quantitative change. This classical form has only seen a shift in material, the latest being cheaply moduled plastics in bright colors. The classic form of the lota cannot be replaced. And mentioning the lota in the India Report was a way of discussing everything that one must consider when designing an object.
Often our project starts with the understanding of the surrounding nature and the possibility to design not only a built structure, not only as a built structure or environment, but also as a natural or green one, such as a garden. In Zanzibar, I worked on a project on the southwest western part of the island, on the coast, And this island consists fully of petrified coral rock. And most of the traditional buildings in the villages are built of that material. And other materials, because of its island, they are important from the mainland. And the site, which is about 2 acres big, was barren when we started. And with maybe 2 or 3 existing trees, and the grounds were covered with only small shrubs. Hardly anything else was growing there due to the lack of the fertile soil and the harsh climatic conditions and lack of sweet water. So before starting the construction of the buildings, which consists of an ensemble of small guest houses that together with a main restaurant building and pool form an eco-resort on the island, that is also mainly dependent on tourism, we started with making a garden. Together with 2 permaculture specialists who run a local garden organization, we started a small nursery and planted fast-growing crops such as bananas that need little soil to mature and once cut down quickly turn into fertile soil. Almost all the plants that are currently on site are grown in just a few years' time, with the exception of the palm trees that are relatively easy to transplant from a nursery outside of the site and are creating a more matured layer in the gardens. The gardens now, a few years later, are lush and green and provide fruits and vegetables for the restaurant of the resort. And each of the buildings has a large veranda and roof terrace overlooking this greenery onto the blue ocean behind it. By beginning this project on site with creating a garden, we established the presence of the new place. But also, by the activity of gardening, we grounded the project to its location, even before it was completed. Much like the permaculture axiom of everything can be resolved in a garden.
Another project that started from the notion of the garden and that used the tool of activity of gardening to address the social challenge of the assignment was a project we called Woontuinen, or Gardens for Living, which we made together with our friends at Studio Makking en Bij and Le Far West. And we were asked to think of out-of-the-box housing solutions for the increasing problem of homelessness under youngsters in the Netherlands. For which we made this little video that I'll be showing now. Yeah, so that's me in front of a windmill. It was very cold that day, actually. So
Now, we looked at places that are most of the time during the week are quite vacant, such as sport clubs, but also these traditional windmills that are often really just monuments and maybe visited on a Sunday or on the weekends. But we looked at how to create small communities around these places and then incorporating also small groups of housing. I hear something around these places that so both these places can benefit from the small communities that are brought there, but also the surrounding neighborhoods. And these very much started from creating this sense of community, which we thought was very important when you look at creating solutions for people that are facing homelessness or about to face it. That their main issue is often that the lack of having a home. This was not a literal translation.
And for us, the aspect of community is important and arises from a comprehensive a comprehensive way of thinking about resilient cities and places. everyone aspires to live in good environments and joyous places, and only by thinking about this in a holistic way, we think that sustainable places are possible.
And we also recognize and appreciate this social and cultural potential of architecture in the work of one of our favorite architects, Lina Bobardi. And we see parallels and relevance to current course of the built environment. This project that we're showing that she realized in Sao Paulo in the 80s, SAISC Pompeia, is a great example of this approach of cultural and communal approach and embracement of the involvement of people in the formation and creation of public space and communities. Bobardi transformed this old metal barrel factory that was already situated within the working class district of Pompeii into a sports and cultural center by mainly embracing the old existing place, valuing it and letting it be empty so that anything can take place there. The space actually already had been occupied spontaneously by neighbors who spent the weekends amidst the warehouses of the industrial complex. The priority of Bobardi, therefore, was to maintain and promote this vital activity without demolishing the existing structures. We move to the other side of the world. A project in Pune, the Afsara project, a residential high school for girls that I worked on, and that was built on the outskirts of Pune. This project took this approach of community building as part of the design process to generate an inclusive and sustainable school campus. The campus exists of a series of buildings that each combine learning spaces on the lower floors with residential spaces on the top floors, and are interspersed with a range of outdoor areas: gardens, sport fields, courtyards, kitchen gardens, waterways, water tanks, and so on and so forth. And all these informal spaces, combined with generous verandas inside the buildings, they create a campus that can be adapted, adjusted, occupied, and claimed by the students and teachers of the school. In this project, we realized with a very limited budget. During the design process, we tried as much as possible to come up with solutions that we would bring quality to the spaces by implementing inventing measures, materials, and details in a cost-efficient way, mostly of them developed through mock-ups and in collaboration with many different builders and craftspeople we worked with to realize this school. And one example of this are the mosaic floors that give each of the different spaces a very unique character through different color combinations and patterns. And they are all made of waste stone that we could collect for free from stone quarries around the site. And to achieve to these floors, no single drawing was made. All the floors were developed on site together with the stone masons that laid the floors.
मैं पहले जब भी एजुकेट करने से पहले मैं सोच लेता हूँ कि इसको क्या तरीके से कर सकते हैं, और मैं ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं अपने आप से करता हूँ। मैं जो मेरे कारीगर हैं उनके पूरे आइडिया लेता हूँ। एक क्रेजी लगाने वाला है, क्रेजी लगाने में ऐसा नहीं है कि क्रेजी आया और रख दिया और हो गया, नहीं है। उसमें उसका डायरेक्शन, उसके टुकड़े, उसकी क्वालिटी, ये सब देखना रहता है कि गैप ज़्यादा तो नहीं जा रहा है, आप रख रहे हैं। और वो क्या होता है कि जब आप कारीगरों को उनको एक्सपर्ट कर देते हैं ना, तो आंख बंद करके भी रखेंगे ना तो अच्छा ही रखेंगे। हाथ उसके हिसाब से चलता है। फिक्सिंग करने में क्या है, कारीगर को ये सोचा कि आपके दिमाग में सोचो मत कि मेरे को 5 पीस वो लाने हैं और वो 5 इधर डालने हैं, वो 5 इधर डालने हैं। नहीं सोचो वैसा मत सोचना। आपके जो हाथ में, आंख बंद के जो हाथ में आवे वो पैराते जाओ, मतलब रखते जाओ। गैप है, ये है, एक सिमिलर दिखना चाहिए आपका। इतना पैटर्न बन रहा है, ऐसा बन रहा है, कैसा जैसा बन रहा है, आप आड़ा लगा रहे हो, टेढ़ा लगा रहे हो, जैसा आप बढ़ते जाओ आप फ्लो। जैसे ही वो उन्होंने थोड़ा लगाया तो उनको खुद को वो हुआ कि ये तो मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, ये तो कैसा दिख रहा है। उनको खुद को जो मतलब वो हिसाब से फिर उनको मेरे को बताने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ी कि वो इतने उसके अंदर आगे बढ़ गए।
That was Rameshwar, the most amazing contractor you will ever meet, probably. Within the world of construction, we're very much interested in a low-tech approach to building and architecture. And we do believe that in this way, buildings can become better understood, and with that maintained, repaired, or adjusted, which is perhaps the best kind of sustainability a building can have. And it's also a way to revert to indigenous knowledge of building that often combines technical, sustainable, cultural, and local approaches to construction in a very integral way. We borrowed this title of Radical Indigenism from the book Low-Tech Design by Radical Indigenism author Julia Watson, who has collected examples of all over the world of vernacular infrastructures to generate sustainable, resilient, and nature-based technology. And one of these examples are root bridges that are built in a region in the state of Meghalaya in the northeast of India, and constructed of living roots of rubber trees. Each of these bridges take about 10 to 15 years to be completely grown into a functional bridge. And then, once constructed, they can last for centuries. The following movie describes the process of making the bamboo facades of the Apsara campus. You will first hear Pratik Raval speaking, who at the time worked at Transolar Climate Engineers from their New York-based office, actually. And he helped us to work out, or he helped Anne to work out the sustainable system of the cooling of the buildings. And then you will hear Malaka Mama, who helped to build the screens.
He's also pictured here.
We very carefully designed this exterior bamboo shading, and we have kind of this setback for the dormitory rooms to create these semi-outdoor verandas to avoid exposure to direct sun without completely eliminating the solar radiation. We are actually bringing in only the amount of solar radiation that is necessary for creating good daylight and visual comfort inside the space without bringing in any solar heat.
जो पुराना में जो लोग बोलते थे कि जब दिन में चांद नहीं रहता है, क्या अमावस होता है, वो टाइम में काटने का। सबको ये आइडिया नहीं, लेकिन मेरा पूरा आइडिया है। मैं भी थोड़ा पुराना भी आदमी है, लेकिन चांद नहीं होना मांगता है दिन में, वो टाइम काटना मांगता है। ऐसा क्यों बोलेगा? तो उसमें जो कीड़ा रहता है, लगता है सब कीड़ा जाके उसमें भूसा निकलता है, ऐसा वाइट भूसा, अपने आटा के माफिक समझो, वो छोटा कीड़ा रहता है। वो लगने के बाद वो बम्बू ख़त्म होता है, वो होल में पानी जाता है और वो बम्बू 1 साल में पूरा ख़त्म होता है। इसलिए अंधेरी रात पे, अंधेरा जब रहेगा, दिन में चांद नहीं, वो टाइम काटने का।
As low-tech as that video we showed seems the calculations and engineering that was applied by, amongst others, Pratik, to this system was for the buildings as important as the indigenous knowledge that Malakar Mama brought about bamboo crafts that was needed to build the facades and understand as well the local climatic conditions. And the holistic passive cooling system of the school that each of the building has could only have come up that way. Solar chimneys on the roofs draw out the hot air in the classrooms, while cooler air is brought in from the plinth on the cooler north side through a series of air ducts, here shown on the bottom right, and protected by plants that helps to cool the air even further. The passive system cools the air by approximately 10 degrees Celsius in the hottest months of the year.
And inspired by the project in Apsara, we designed another campus in Germany, North Germany, Hamburg, where we were asked during a competition stage to design a school building for two big high schools that were going to be combined into one building in the middle of a park, in the middle of a garden city, the garden city of Norderstedt, just north of Hamburg. Also here a garden with a very big building and two very big sport halls. We started by investigating what was already there in the park. So we studied all the plant species, all the little birds and bees and insects that were there, and we had lots of pleasure drawing them all up and making an inventory of what was already there. And it was a bit of a joke we just did to entertain ourselves. But we also then looked at whether we could get inspiration, and we started putting this kind of like natural element next to this building element. So these things that you use to open the windows and facade textures or structures that looked very similar suddenly, like some of the natural elements. And we did something similar in the section where we drew the same amount below ground as we did above ground, also just to entertain ourselves. And we didn't win the project. Here we worked with Transolar to make up a climate system that again completely passively cools and heats the building in summer and winter. And as you may have already seen, uses large parts of the facade for PV panels and electricity production. We were also asked to develop a proposal for the future of the Afvalkathedraal, a waste recycling plant in The Hague, a building that fascinates us by its scale, its architecture, and the possibility it offers as a public circular site for the residents of The Hague. At first glance, the building seems too big and somewhat redundant as a space within the Brinkhorst. But that is precisely why it offers the opportunity to manifest itself as a place, without a program and without a function, and maybe as a free heaven for the local residents of The Hague, or the visitors, or the passerby. We called the project the Cathedral of Things. And the fascination with this building is also about its high-tech features, its elements and its principles, which you can carefully derive to all its parts, and that you can actually appreciate and approach perhaps almost more as an industrial product designer than as an architect. The building was designed by Jan Brouwer, who we actually didn't know before we started the project, but now we know all about him. High-tech was always more of a philosophy than a style, which is maybe why the original buildings and their architects adapted so successfully over the years. And as a design method rooted in sustainability, continuing to build on the existing also ensures a flexible attitude towards changing use of those buildings in the future, where expansion or adaptation is and remains possible, and where the building can continue to shape itself according to the wishes and the needs of its surroundings. And especially so in this building, because it was designed in such a way that it could be completely taken apart. And there was actually a design to extend the building by just doubling its size in exactly a mirrored version. That never happened. This is a drawing of a house by architect James Cowan. It appears to be more of a commentary on building elements rather than a demonstration of how they actually would go together. And Cowan shows how each of this element can be considered on its own without suggesting the constructive relationship. And we studied the details and the elements of the building of the Afvalkathedraal. Their characteristics, their expression, their detailing. Very simple but distinct in order to answer the questions that were posed to us. And in doing so, looked at how the waste processing plant, the Afvalkathedraal, could become a place with meaning for the neighborhood, the city, and its many visitors. And you could argue that the building has actually already changed. From an industrial building in an equally industrial context, it has already, and with the ongoing developments in the Brinkhorst increasingly, standing there as a remarkable art object in its somewhat empty surroundings. And with a nod to its former function, we are repositioning the cathedral in the neighborhood, not so much by changing it, but by embracing it. By maybe literally putting it in the spotlight, by installing bold, colossal lights, fixtures that mark the building within its surroundings and the new waterfront park. And we saw a resemblance to the work of Luc Deleuze, and specifically his container artworks, which are uncomfortably balancing and pulled out of context. And in doing so, they're taking on new meaning. And we wanted to quote Luc Deleuze. "It's my deep conviction that there has at present been enough construction in the world, and that maybe it would be better if architects reflected on the reuse of what is already there, about using what is already there in a different context. And as a result, much of my work carries the aspect of ready-made or recycling." Like a palimpsest, a place that has been used before and swept away and erased, but where the traces of the old are still present. On this spot in The Hague, we also collect these old traces, but more so the new traces, the new uses, the possibilities, the wishes and the potentials that not we as architects, but the people of The Hague will finally give to this space. And that's basically why we left the Afvalkathedraal empty. We didn't do anything. We also didn't win. But it could, like this, become a place for the city. Just like Cesc Pompeii, that we just showed you before. And similarly, the Waste Cathedral becomes a place for the local residents, for the residents of The Hague, to spend their weekends, evenings and leisure time. But this cannot be done without first repairing some of its mistakes, or miscomings. It is precisely the building's excessive size that makes it extremely suitable for the circular reuse of materials and things from the surrounding area, for example. Think of all the businesses around it, all the buildings that are going to be demolished or built there. The building is forgiving enough to adopt all these kind of building elements from the Brinkhorst or elsewhere, and in doing so making the building usable as a public space. By opening it towards the park, with the installation of openings, gates or large doors, or for example by making it accessible by adding stairs to connect the different floor levels. And by approaching the building transformation as an industrial product design, just like the Herman Miller furniture factory in Bath, where unique facade elements, a product designed by the architects Farrell and Grimshaw, made the building enormously flexible and adaptable. Herman Miller was looking for a building they could change and adapt. The building would take care of them, Grimshaw added. In that sense, the building and furniture had to support human activity, and not the other way around. And that appealed to us a lot when working on this project in The Hague. And that it can work, is also proven by Grimshaw's building. Because his current firm recently completed a transformation of the former factory into a university campus. And similarly, we propose to modify the building with simple but effective interventions. The gate and the stair have already been mentioned, but the building should also become a bit more comfortable for use as a public space. A public fireplace as a warm place where people come together, find company, but also a sustainable place where bio-waste from the area can be processed as fuel, is a small nod to the former function as a waste plant. But also the light fixtures around the buildings and all the other added elements that are a reference to the existing building. An inspiration perhaps, but above all a celebration or homage to the building and all its specific characteristics, features and details. Little things and interventions that transform, change and transform the building as it currently is. Into the Cathedral of Things, a large-scale public interior for the residents of The Hague, or maybe a people's palace for the city and a free space within the progressive and new Brinkhorst district.
And from the city of Den Haag, we look more at landscapes and countryside. And the relationship between landscapes and production of materials is something that interests us a lot. We're looking here at Twente, and mainly the countryside of Twente, which is characteristic by this idyllic hedgerow landscapes, or coulissenlandschappen. But it's also one of the most urbanized areas, actually, in the province of Overijssel. The region is exemplary for the current and urgent issues Dutch farmers are facing. Energy transition, of course, but also the lack of succession of farms, the need for scaling up to be financially stable, the nitrogen crisis, etc. We initiated a design research earlier this year that looked into the role of bio-based building materials in the region of Twente, and more so on possible ways of living, working and producing in rural areas. The project addresses how the interrelation between agricultural production and the need for renewable building materials can be of meaning for a local farming community to transit to a more sustainable and resilient way of farming. The project has a strong emphasis on building community and interaction with the land. Through researching local plants, fruits and trees and their meaning within a cultural and historical context, as well as their potential to be used or transformed into building materials. We developed a new building typology that relies on communal belonging, collaboration and resilience. We designed a prototypical construction method using regional vegetations as a base. And these structures would initially be intended for sharing of equipment, tools and knowledge between the farming communities. The structure's function and meaning, however, evolves through time and grows in its existence. The process of creation and ongoing use by local farming communities. And this project in Twente builds upon our ongoing research into bio-based construction materials, both in the Netherlands and in India. That actually started with our interest in and fascination with hemp as a construction material.
Which brings us to Groningen. Which brings us to Groningen, a city all the way up in the north of the Netherlands, where they produce hemp on large scale. Hemp there is having its heyday, if you may believe some of these news articles. And most of the production that happens there actually is being exported to Germany, where car manufacturers use it to make body plates for cars or insulation materials. And some of it is being used in the construction industry. And according to this guy, who's a bit weird, it's going to save humanity. And he may actually be right. This is interesting. This is the manufacturers building on the World Exhibition in Chicago in 1893. And it describes the most commonly used industrial construction materials. And you can see wood in one corner, iron in the other one, stone in the other one, and hemp in the fourth corner. And hemp was a very common material to make fabrics, to make ropes, to make basically anything. We'll get to that in a bit. And it was then forbidden in the war on drugs in America, and Europe followed basically, apart from France, because the French don't like to follow what the Americans do. And only recently we started using it again and thinking about it as a material that maybe actually has lots of benefits. These are old postcards that show the production and harvesting of hemp. And especially also in Rotterdam, you may even be able to argue that the name of this city has been derived from the production of hemp. Because if you harvest hemp, you need to let it rot. And if you rot it, where did they do that? They did that in the Rotte. And that's why Rotterdam is called Rotterdam.
According to some.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. But the kind of omnipresence of the material is also shown in this little children's drawing book from 1873. A little book with lots of little stories that explain what you can all make out of hemp. And then at some point there was a bit of a we kind of started to look into it again as a society. But that's a while ago. And for example, Henry Ford made a car in the 40s. This is the New York Times from the 14th of August in 1941. A car completely made out of bioplastics, including its fuel, but also the whole body and everything. And it's very strong. It's much stronger than steel or aluminium, actually. And he's actually also showing that here in a little video.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
And then lots of literature. Once you really dig into it, 1979, marijuana and other stories about the best fish ropes, the best materials to make clothes. And the woman on the right wears a big bale of hemp on her head that's ready to be manufactured. Again, a book explaining everything you can do with hemp from 1943. It grows really fast, almost 4 meters in 4 months, and while doing so, treats the soil because it has very deep roots. It helps to revitalize it without any pesticides. Very good crop to be used in between other crops. This farmer here, 1994 in America, very happy because for the first time in 40 years he got a license to grow hemp on his farm. And then if we get very technical, you can use the plant for everything because it has both fiber qualities as well as really strong timber qualities. And if you split the two, on the left you see the timber qualities, and on the right you see the fibers. Fibers are used for soft materials, soft insulation materials, clothes, and the timber pieces on the left are used for more for construction materials. And this is this ratting process that you see to kind of separate the two. And then you can basically make anything out of it, all carbon neutral. And we're now more and more using it in construction, although not enough if you ask us. You can make blocks out of it, you can pour it like concrete, you can put it into a balloon frame if you want to build even higher. And it has amazing qualities also when you use it as a construction material. It's almost completely fireproof, has great acoustic qualities, and also deals with taking up moist air and then slowly bringing it back into the environment again. So yeah, it could be the next big thing after concrete. And we thought, let's try that. Let's try that in our project in Nijmegen. There was a housing association that asked architects to come up with a solutions or a project for a sustainable, affordable and circular housing building with around 70 social rental apartments in this new area just on the other side of the river. So you see the old town of Nijmegen in the back. And then here in this green area, there's soon to be a completely new neighborhood to be constructed. And we thought, let's give that hemp a try. So we did. We submitted for the competition and designed this housing block on the edge of the city with some nice floor plans for people to live in. Just looks like a normal building, really, but it's made out of hemp and timber. We don't really, it looks like any other building. Made it out of metal, maybe. Didn't really know at the time. This was one of the first sketch models that we made. This was a kind of a concept for the floor plan that we made and then put on the wall in our studio and kind of played around. And then I think this is the rendering that we submitted for the competition entry. We didn't particularly thought that the building had to look like a very sustainable building or something made out of hemp, so we just cladded it in normal timber window frames and a corrugated panel on the outside that we then thought could also be made out of hemp. But yeah, just a normal building like any other, and I think that's also what people want, especially if you're talking about social rent apartments. They're relatively small. Probably nice if the walls on the inside are just white, and then you can paint them and maintain them. So yeah, just like any other building. And actually made as a balloon frame construction, a construction method that's being used in America all over the place. It's cheap, it's fast, and you can almost build it by hand. And we also did that deliberately because we thought that if you make a building out of CLT, you actually use a lot more wood, and wood takes a long time to grow. And if you fill the balloon frame with hemp, that only needs 4 months to grow. Surely that would be better, we thought. So we went to the producer of all this material, asked them whether they could make it. They said yes. So we were convinced. This is basically what you need: hemp in the background and lime from France, to be honest, not from the Netherlands, so but close enough, we thought. Yeah, that combined would make that building. I have to tell you, unfortunately, that the client thought otherwise. We went through a whole process of that with them together. We basically developed 2 schemes in parallel up to the VO stage. Yeah, increasing construction prices, risky market, expensive timber made them decide to build the project in concrete. But we'll try again, and next time we'll definitely succeed. Well, hopefully, and if not next time, the time after.
There were a lot of lessons learned that we for sure bring to next projects. And that brings us again to India, Channapatna. And we often work with several craftspeople and artisans from all over India. And currently we're working with a group of craftspeople from Channapatna. And with many of them we are currently building a collection of furniture and objects. And the people from Channapatna, or the town of Channapatna, I have to say, is situated in the south of India, not far from Bangalore, and it's famous for its production of wooden lacquered toys. It's therefore also called the Toy Town. These toys are produced... Here we don't need sound. And these toys are produced in ivory wood, a local softwood, and are then lacquered by using natural pigments, such as turmeric and other vegetable-based pigments, and making the toys safe for children to use. That was not part of it. And together with these craftspeople, we are currently working to develop a series of pepper mills using the wood turning techniques in which the toys are made.
ಇದನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ತಂದೆ ಯಾವ ತರ ಇದು ಇಂಡಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಓಪನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ
Sorry, that was cut a bit short.
ತೆಗೆದಿ ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು
The lacquer, which is mixed by heating the lacquer resin and pigments together, is then applied to the wooden toys on the lathe machine. That by the rotative friction causes to melt and evenly spreads the color to the wood. They also use bamboo leaves to fix it. And the collaborations with the artisans, such as the ones from Channapatna, is always the starting point of the design process, as well as the development when we work on these furnitures. And from metal casting, using recycled metal, which is actually purer than the new metal, and of better quality, to woodworking and refinery of joinery we incorporate into the designs. Or working with typical Indian products such as indigo, which we apply to this chair, for example. And for us, it is the joy of these collaborations, as well as the quickness and directness of prototyping that we can do in India, and the development from start to finish of such products. That is often not seen in architecture projects, but can take very long time. And we enjoy that process a lot. So here we are casting some balls that we are currently developing. Again, made from recycled metal. And then are formed into these balls that are very bright and colorful. And from this collection of furniture, we come towards the end of our talk. Back to the start, to the Eameses, Ray and Charles. And before we end this talk and continue this Friday evening, we show you one last contribution, bringing us to the hometown of the Eameses, LA. Very different than Mumbai and definitely Amsterdam, where we are based. We ask you to watch this celebration in light of the many aspects of practicing architecture, design thoughts, and the many places of interest we shared with you tonight. And perhaps to take something of this home with you.
A lot of people think LA is just eyesore after eyesore, full of mini malls, palm trees, and billboards. So what? They don't know the LA I know. The good, the bad, and the ugly about LA. The good, the Forum, the Five Torches, the Cockatoo Inn, Raleigh Hut, Watchtowers. One man's eyesore is another man's paradise. The bad, the traffic. Each freeway has its own personality. The 405, bougie traffic. The 110, that's gangster traffic right there. It's the difference. You gotta know where you at. Coming from South Central Los Angeles, you gotta use what you got and make the best of it. What I love about the Eames is how resourceful they are. Charles and Ray Eames, a husband and wife team. Before I did rap music, I studied architectural drafting, and one thing I learned is that you always gotta have a plan. 2 days to build this frame. 2 days. Got off-the-shelf factory windows, prefabricated walls. They was doing mashups before mashups even existed. It's not about the pieces, it's how the pieces work together. You know, taking something that already exists and making it something special. You know, kind of like sampling. In a world full of McMansions, where the structure takes up all the land, the Eames made structure and nature one. This is going green 1949 style, bitch. Believe that. Who are these people who got a problem with LA? Maybe they just mad they don't live here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I was wondering, there's time for a couple of questions. If there's someone who wants to ask something. Yep.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very inspiring. Thank you for the presentation. It was very inspiring. I love both the work in the Netherlands and abroad. But I also see that abroad you reach a very high quality of execution, and I know that's very difficult to reach that. You have to be really involved. So I was wondering, how do you manage to be maybe on site and to work with the constructors to get to this high level of detail in your buildings, because that's really astonishing.
You mean in the projects in India or in general?
Yeah, in general.
Okay. Well, I think there's a big difference between the practice of building in both countries. And in India, we can be way more involved in this construction process. And we, very often we are on site designing things through the use of making mock-ups and working with the builders and the contractor or craftspeople that are there. And that's a way that we that helps us obviously in creating that level of detail and really giving that attention to how things are built. And what we see here in the Netherlands is that other than in India, where we use drawings to communicate. As my Hindi, I know it a little bit, but it's not very good. So especially when I'm on construction site, I use a drawing to explain ideas and thoughts. And especially the carpenters that I work with, they're very good also in drawing. And therefore, the drawing really becomes a way of a tool, a way of communicating. And we do see that that is very different in the Netherlands, where drawings are often also contracts. And like if it's not built that way, or the contractor also like really search through all the drawings to find mistakes, and it becomes also a legal document, and that prevents us also to be that involved on construction site. But we do learn from the projects we do in India, and we also try to be involved as much as we can as architects in the construction process also here in the Netherlands. And that's a challenge, but does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it also requires a lot of devotion from you as an architect to be on the site details all the time. It's very nice.
Yeah. I think it's that maybe, which I think we do have, and mainly because we enjoy it. But it's also based on trust, I think, a lot in the builders. And I've been in India for now almost 10 years, and many of the craftspeople that I work with, or the builders, or Rameshwar that you saw in the movie, also in the school, I've known also for a long time. And sometimes I can also not draw something, not design something, just explain an idea, and then I know it will be fine, because I know that his interests is similar to what we're trying to achieve. And that's quite unique, I think. But that's David also mentioned, he's maybe one of the best contractors to work with. So.
Hi. Beautiful work. Amazing. And yeah, I can see that you guys are really involved in the idea of making, right? The idea of producing something, understanding where that comes from, how does something come from an idea, how do you make it, and how that transforms into the thing that you end up wherever it goes, whether it's furniture or whether it's a building. But to harken back kind of to the comment that you just made about the industry in the Netherlands, the Netherlands isn't geared to this kind of working, which you've kind of, is this a critique? I mean, would you say that we are doing things incorrectly here?
No, not at all. I think, and maybe we're also, we're a young practice, so we like being naive in just trying. As you may have noticed, there aren't any build projects in the Netherlands, so we also still have to prove ourselves, or see what we can do in a different context. But we don't. No, it's not a critique that we're doing something wrong here, I think.
But maybe to add upon it, do you miss it? Like I notice in India you're working a lot like on the project or with the constructors, with the material. Do you miss it here in the Netherlands?
No, I think maybe tonight we also maybe showed also a very romantic side of this way of working in India, but it can also be frustrating, and yeah, which is normal, I think, also, and and I think what we enjoy a lot is being able to work in both places or in many places, and also on many skills of building, from literally furniture to landscape or more urban projects, and I think that allows us also to search for something interesting in each of these projects, and then it maybe doesn't matter where it is and or how big or how small it is.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Hey, thank you for your lecture. I was wondering if you could share some lessons in using, for example, the hennep concrete and using it in a project. Lessons that you've learned during the project and working at, of course, the material hasn't been chosen, and you talked about that you've learned a lot from it. Maybe you could share so we can also learn from your experience.
Yeah. We had a meeting with 2 other housing corporations recently. They were all super interested, and I think what we told them is that we probably aimed too high at the start. So I think the lesson learned that I would advise you is not make a building all out of hemp, but maybe make a concrete building with a concrete frame and then fill it with hemp, for example. So I think one step at a time is definitely a lesson we have learned.
Slightly smaller building would maybe also have helped.
Yeah. We wanted to skip the pavilion and go straight into the 8-story housing building. Maybe there's something in between. And technically, I think we've learned that there's still a lot of regulation you need to deal with, or the lack of regulation actually. So none of these products are certified, and the way our construction industry works is that each product needs a warranty or a certification for very good reasons. Safety, for example, is not something you should deal lightly with. And your client may be willing to get all these certifications, but it's going to cost him or her a lot of money. By the time they get an invoice for that, they probably just want to build their building from another material than hemp, because it's way too expensive to just for one party to pay all of that. So I think as an industry as a whole, we just need to move forward. And I think the good news is that it is happening, and we're not the only people trying to push for the use of this material. There's many people doing it at the same time. Hopefully in a year's time, or maybe 2 or 3, all these products will have certifications, and it will be much easier for all of us to use and specify.
Looking at the time, I would like to do 1 or 2 more questions. Did you want to ask something? No. Yeah?
I was worried by one thing you said, and it was that you talked to a housing corporation and then you saw wise lessons in that. We've been working with housing corporations for 25 years, and there are no wise lessons to be had from talking to a housing corporation. I really, these are forces for mediocrity and forces for making everything the same. Of course, that's not a really workable position to have if you're an architect in the Netherlands. But one of the things that I find to be so celebrated and so beautiful in your work is it's not about having an avant-garde or a kind of an arrogant position at all, but it is very uncompromising what you are doing, and also the project with the what is it? The Afvalkathedraal. I thought these are really uncompromising projects, and I do think that the Dutch construction business is bad. I really do. I mean, the fact that it works in such a way that you can choose between hemp and wood, on the other side concrete, which is the most dirty and the most dangerous material that you can have, and then the system works somehow so that the the choice falls on concrete because it's the easiest thing to do. I think that means that there's something deeply wrong with the Dutch housing construction. So what I'm asking of you maybe is to become more arrogant more resistant, more arrogant, yeah. But because the work itself, it's wow. It's I thought it was amazing.
I think maybe we should.
There's one last question here.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm actually also a huge fan of Julia Watson's work, and I think it's so interesting how you managed to very cleverly combine contemporary ideas with indigenous ideas. And as an African, I saw that you did a project in Tanzania, and I was wondering if you were actually considering doing more work in Africa, because I think we have a lot of interesting, indigenous communities that do a lot of, interesting work with interesting materials. Are you thinking of that? Could you perhaps?
We'd love to.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's obviously a very different continent even than the South Asian or the Indian one. But we do see also, and then I know that also a little bit from the experience in Zanzibar, that there's also some similarities in that, and you mentioned them a few. So yeah, we could definitely see that. And, but we're relatively young and small, so one step at a time.